Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me as we dive right into some news around the league. Was covering the big firing of Chuck Fletcher and the Philadelphia Flyers, bringing in Danny Briere as an interim GM, and then we will jump to our favorite girlfriend teams of the rest of this season. So if you're unfamiliar with girlfriend teams, don't worry, we're going to explain it all. But before we do that, Justin, welcome to the show as usual. And let's talk a little bit of Chuck Fletcher.
Dude, I'm excited. It's been a couple weeks too since trade deadline. So
yes, it has. I know. I feel like we did our trade deadline. We went through all the trades, and last week. I feel like last week didn't even happen. I don't know what happened. You and I did not talk. And that's unusual. Usually we talk like every few days at least. I don't think we talked at all. Maybe I sent you like a meme once or something, but we didn't really talk. And so then I was like, "Oh my gosh, we didn't even do a show. This is terrible." It ruined my whole week.
I'm glad to hear that I ruined your
terrible week. No, you didn't ruin my week. It's my lack of planning ruined my whole week. So.
Well, listen, you just had a baby, man. You've got a lot on your plate there. So.
That's true. I had to push that baby. Nope, I didn't do that at all. Didn't do that at all.
Oh, are you identifying as a mother now?
Oh yes, I'm a pregnant person. So let's talk Chuck Fletcher. He was fired. It was about a week ago now. I think it's interesting to look at it after you have a chance to kind of digest it and watch what the next general manager does. I know that Danny Briere is the quote interim GM. However, he has come out very confident and strong towards a vision for this team. Basically saying we're going to go in and rebuild. We're not going to sell off all our young pieces like he didn't say this, but like Arizona has done, where they're like, screw it. I mean, you're 22 years old. You're too old for our rebuild. That's how garbage we are. Philadelphia recognizes they have some talent, but there are quite a few pieces that need to move, and they are definitely headed for a rebuild. How long that rebuild will last, my guess is they are hoping that their rebuild can be very similar to the New York Rangers. And maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs to a certain extent. The Leafs started to kind of rebuild in 2014 and 2016. They got Austin Matthews, and kind of away they went. They had one more bad season once they got Matthews, and then it was did they make the playoffs the first year, Matthews? Yeah, they did. So once they got Matthews, it was full on head steam with the players they had. So I mean, these can happen quickly. But they can also happen the way that, Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo, some of these other teams have tried to rebuild where it takes a long time. I mean, Edmonton Oilers, it took them forever to make it to a conference final after being terrible for like 10 years.
Yeah, I think the difference is, right, you have to draft well nowadays if you want to rebuild. Because the problem is, for example, a team like Detroit, right, they had some high draft picks, but not exactly like, top 5 draft picks. I think, really their only top 5 draft pick in the last 10 years has been Lucas Raymond. But, for Detroit, just speaking from experience watching them, right, their other big picks, 6th overall in 2018 and 13th overall, or 30th, I'm sorry, is, Philip Zadina, Joe Veleno, these guys.
Seider was a 6th overall, yeah.
Yeah, I think Seider again was, just more or less having good scouting, right? And so that's really what you need to do. You need to have a general manager who knows how to draft well and draft later into rounds too, because he did that quite a bit with Tampa, obviously, and knowing how to build a team successful, right, is super important.
Well, and Tampa also had a 2nd overall pick in Hedman, now 1st overall pick in Stamkos, like. It's, let's not fool ourselves. They definitely had some great picks. And how many teams have won the Stanley Cup without a 1st overall pick on their team?
Right. It's so hard. And you look at Toronto, right? They're a perfect example of a team that, again, they had the high draft pick, right? You had Austin Matthews. You drafted well with Mitch Marner and some of these other guys. And
William Nylander was a 7th overall pick. You had to hit on that.
Now you're also a destination where a guy like John Tavares wanted to go. Right. And I don't really know if, obviously Philly's going to be that kind of destination or a place where they're going to get a high-end player like that in free agency. So they have to draft a little bit better and be a little bit more patient with their younger players.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, now that is why they are quote unquote tanking now for the bottom. I mean, they will be certainly in a position, probably bottom 5 to grab that top spot. They've got a so-so chance of getting that and a decent chance at hitting in the lottery. And if not, they're likely like that 5-6, which you can still get a really good player at that location in the draft. But yeah, I mean, whoever gets that first overall pick, it almost is like, hey, this is like one of the keys you need. Like you need some kind of superstar type of player. I'd say, I mean, other than what we say, the St. Louis Blues didn't really have that like number 1 overall pick. I mean, they had Pietrangelo, I think it was a 4th overall pick. And other than that, they didn't really have anyone who was I guess they had Jay Bouwmeester. Bouwmeester was a first overall pick, wasn't he? Third overall pick. So you're getting closer, but you look at the other teams that have won the Cup. Colorado, they have Nathan McKinnon. Tampa, they've got a couple top 3 picks. You've got Washington, obviously, they have Ovechkin. Pittsburgh, Chicago, all these teams that have had first overall picks. So really, St. Louis is the only team in like the last 10 years that has won without a first overall pick. So, I mean, it's hard to win without super high-end talent. I mean, you can definitely go far. You can certainly win, but it's rare. Far more rare than having that first overall pick. So, I mean, that's truly, it's where the lottery is so important to some of these teams. But the Flyers are kind of in this interesting spot where you know that their fan base wants to win. They're sick of losing. But I do think that they will have patience, because if somebody comes out and says, we're just rebuilding, you go, okay, like it's about time. I think that there was the same. I actually think that Toronto basically saying we're going to rebuild back when they did 7-8 years ago now. I think that opened the door for other teams to be able to do this, because there was this vibe of like, oh, the Leafs can't just come out and rebuild, like the fans won't stand for it kind of thing. And I remember always sitting there like, I will happily take a rebuild over first round losses, barely missing the playoffs. Like, this is just, it's annoying. Let's just be bad for a minute and then we can actually have a shot at being good. And I think that maybe opened the door for other teams to tank. I don't think that, like, even Montreal's tanking right now. And I don't think that that's really ever happened where you can look and go, Montreal's intentionally kind of trying to find their way to the bottom of the standings. It made it okay for the Rangers to tank. I don't think that the Rangers had ever tanked before. They sent that letter out to their fans. What was that, 4 or 5 years ago that they did that? I think that a big market like Toronto saying, let's just rebuild, I really think opened the door for other franchises that have these quote unquote impatient fans that just want to win the cup every year. I think it opened the door to going, hey, they did it. They were fine. Look where they are now. Let's do it too.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see how Danny Briere does. I mean, really, you look at his staff history, right? I mean, he was just a little over a year, just a special assistant to the GM in Philly before he took over. And so, prior to that, I mean, obviously he's 45, so he doesn't have a lot of experience as far as, management is concerned. And so, I think right now you're starting to see this trend.
I actually think that he was up for the Montreal job, if I remember right.
Yes, he was, because he was French speaking, which was a big thing, I remember. So his name was definitely tossed around.
But Philly didn't want to lose him, and I think that's why they gave him the title they gave him. I think that he was something like he was just an advisor or something, and they brought him in more because they did want him to eventually do something. And obviously it was a good move. And I know that ownership really likes him. So that always goes in your favor.
Right. Yeah. Always willing to get a couple more dollars to spend is so important. And, but I mean, with this trend of former players coming in, right. So we have, Steve Yzerman, Marty St. Louis taking over the head coaching job. And then of course, Chris Drury in New York. So, all these guys so far, in my opinion, have had a lot of success, and I'm hoping that Danny Briere keeps that up because, Listen, I like Philadelphia's, old school Broad Street mentality. And, who knows, maybe Briere is the one guy that starts to bring in, more skilled guys and less of a grit kind of team that Philly has always been known for.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work much anymore. It just,
And it makes me wonder how long John Tortorella is going to be around too now, because, clearly he was brought in knowing that, okay, we're not going to be great this year, but I'm going to coach the hell out of the team and try to squeeze a little bit more out. And then, of course, Chuck Fletcher's gone. So now does Danny try to put his stamp on this team and bring in his guy, or does he just let John kind of ride it out for the next couple of years while they rebuild?
Well, and I also, my guess is that Briere had some input on hiring John Tortorella since he was there. Like, it's not as if they're bringing in a complete outsider into the picture.
Right.
And I think you do know, at least you know what you get with John Tortorella. It's a really good coach, somebody who is going to push guys, and that's not a bad thing to have during a rebuild, especially if it's more of a like, hey, let's be bad for maybe this year, next year, and then the year after that we'll start to really try to compete again. My question would be, is Tortorella down? Like you said, he was brought in to see if he could squeeze something out of this team, and the fact that he can't, or he's maybe not going to be able to give anything to squeeze. He's literally been given an empty toothpaste bottle. Maybe he just goes, I mean, I could go coach somewhere else where I'm actually going to be able to win. I mean, he's not, I don't know how old John Tortorella is, but I don't think he's
64, and he's got 3 more years left on his deal.
Yeah, well, and maybe you do come to this point where it's, hey, we're going to walk away from each other. But my guess is that Briere was involved in the conversations of him being hired. So I would assume that he's going to get every chance to, come back next year and see what he can do with some of these younger guys. And who knows, maybe it would be an interesting opportunity for Tortorella to be here from the ground up and to take some of these young guys to teach them how to play the way that he believes hockey should be played. And, maybe you end up with a really good team because they have that consistency. And I will say, even though he is, quote unquote, this like more old school kind of coach, he still plays such a way where like speed is definitely a part of his game. Like the way that he coaches, there's a lot of forechecking involved. Fast players thrive under his system. I just think of like Cam Atkinson, Boone Jenner, as these guys who are willing to kind of crash and make things happen, and they need speed to be able to do that. So it's not as if his way of coaching is just not going to work in this day and age. I think a really good forecheck, a good system that builds around that forecheck is going to be successful in today's game. So, I think that Tortorella will probably be given every opportunity to do it, also because they don't want to pay 2 people. They don't want to pay 2 coaches.
Don't want to end up like Vancouver paying 8 coaches.
Yes, exactly. Which, by the way, the salary cap looks like it might go up more than $1 million next year. So that's fun.
That'd be great.
I have one thing that I want to, before we get to our girlfriend teams, there's one correction that I want to make. And I have said this probably several times over the course of our trade deadline thing, shows and rumors and whatnot. I have incorrectly been saying that teams can retain the salary of 2 players, and I have been wrong the whole time. They are able to retain the salary on 3 players. I don't know when that changed, but I know that it was 2 at one point, and now it is 3. So that's my bad. I've said that.
That's my bad too. I didn't correct
many times, and actually today I was looking at Cap Friendly and was like, oh, I'm looking at all the teams and I see retained, and there's 0 out of 3, 0 out of 3. Oh, this is 3. So there's only 2 teams that have retained all 3 of those salaries, and that is Arizona and Detroit. They have retained have 3 salaries retained through the rest of the year. So just wanted to, air out my dirty laundry since I effed up. There you go. It's 3, not 2. So I will never get that wrong again. But yes, the Red Wings are retaining Richard Panik, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Jacob Vrana. And Jacob Vrana is next year too. So there you go. Well, should we get into our girlfriend teams, or do you have anything else you want to add as far as news goes?
Well, I mean, I know this just happened last night, but maybe it was the night before. But Connor McDavid, though, most points since I think 95, 96 with Mario Lemieux. Definitely the most in the modern, cap era at 129, and he only did it. It only took 68 games.
And climbing.
Wild.
Guy might have 150 points by the end of the year. Actually, if he doesn't have 150 points, I think I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
Unless they decide the last 4 games of the year they can rest him.
Well, let's see. I mean, he's averaging 1.9 points per game, so that would put him over 150.
Yeah. And I mean, Edmonton is definitely in a spot where they're probably not missing the playoffs at this point, but they're also not in a super secure place. I don't think that they'd 4 games rest them or anything like that towards the end of the year. But the Western Conference playoff race has really is weird. We can get into that with our girlfriend teams and let that conversation take its way. But yes, congratulations to Connor McDavid, who is really good.
He's got that Hart Trophy locked up for sure.
Yes, I think that Hart Trophy is his. I don't think Matthews is going to get it. Back to back. Also, he did come out and say that he hurt his hand early in the year and has just not been the same since he hurt his hand. So
that would definitely explain it.
That would explain it. Yep. Yeah, his shot just kind of doesn't look the same, and hopefully he figures that out. I hesitate to say hey, just shut the guy down until the playoffs, but it's not like they need to. They're in no danger of losing, but I guess you really want to keep your home ice advantage away from Tampa Bay. That's probably the only motivation you have left through the last 15 games of the season. So
yeah, probably.
Okay, well let's jump into our girlfriend teams. How did you? So I'll be honest, I didn't rank mine. I just have a list of teams. I did do 10, but I don't necessarily have I love this team better than that, other than maybe my top 3. But I kind of pick teams that I'm very interested in watching, and I have maybe more so I have them in tiers, but I don't really have them this is number 1 and this is number 5. I just kind of put them into a list and then lots of reasons why. How did you? I'm assuming you ranked them because you always rank. And
yes.
I tend to buck the system because I'm a rebel. So what went into your rankings?
Yeah, so I did rank them 1 to 10. Basically, these are teams that, and I don't think it's not necessarily just this year for me. Really, my girlfriend teams are more or less a collection of years where I've always been pining for these teams to win a cup or hoping that they would. And whether or not they have or have not, they're still a girlfriend team because I've rooted for them in the past.
You have some history with them, yeah.
Yes.
You've made out a few times, yeah.
And and especially in the days when Detroit was successful in making that 25-year run in the playoffs, there was always a team on the East where I was like, you know what, that's the team I want to see Detroit play. Not necessarily because I want Detroit to have an easy team to play or anything like that, but just because I want to see that team succeed. So there's been history with some teams, and so it changes from year to year depending on how successful a team has maybe been if they won some cups.
Vancouver was one of my girlfriend has always been a team that I would gravitate towards. I loved Vancouver back when the Sedins were there and during their 2011 Cup run. I was always rooting for Vancouver, but they're not a girlfriend team of mine this year because they're not going to make the playoffs. I'm not super interested in them. I mean, I was interested in them earlier in the year. I definitely followed them when they had lots of drama around their team, but as far as a girlfriend team going as we move in through the playoff race and into the playoffs, they are not on that list.
Yeah, and then also too, there's certain players, right? Like you mentioned the Sedins. There's always certain players on some teams where I'm like, you know what, that guy deserves a cup. I want that player to get a ring or something along those lines. So, or just maybe for example, there's teams where I'm like, you know what, I just think they would be fun to see go deep in the playoffs. They would just be exciting to watch all off season long. So
yeah, I get it. And I'll say this, and just we forgot to maybe talk about what girlfriend teams are. I think you can figure it out. But your team is your wife. The Toronto Maple Leafs are my team. Detroit Red Wings are Justin's, and so those are those are the team that's the team you cheer for. The diehard team, no matter what, you want them to win against anyone else. Unfortunately for Justin, the Red Wings will not be in the playoffs again this year. So, I mean, you automatically, you're picking 10. You've got a list of 10 teams, and none of them, it doesn't matter if they're in the same division as the Wings or anything, because you can just, you've got free range. I know how it feels, Justin, because I'm a Leafs fan.
Yeah, you guys had a nice little
nice little run. And they still have, the last time they won a playoff series, I was a senior in high school. That gives you any, that was 2004, so that's how I measure time. But so the way I did mine, I kind of did them by division. Like I was like, I'm going to pick a few teams per division, just because the first round generally it's a divisional matchup anyways. So just trying to pick the teams that I'd like to follow moving into there. And I have some teams that like maybe are on that playoff bubble. I only have one Atlantic team because I'm not going to cheer. I'm never going to cheer for Boston. I'm not cheering for Tampa, and I don't want to cheer for Florida. I don't really like them very much. So that like it just makes it hard to to drop an Atlantic team, because I know that the Leafs are probably going to play most of those teams if or at least one of those teams in the playoffs, Tampa Bay, and I'm never going to cheer for Boston. So yeah, my list is far more Western Conference heavy because of knowing that, hey, the Leafs have a chance to play a few teams here in the Eastern Conference if they win rounds and like end up playing a Metro team. So that definitely impacts my list, where I'm trying not to pick teams that are in the same division or who I think they might play. So,
okay, love it.
All right. Well, with that said, let's go your number 10.
Number 10, the Buffalo Sabres. Let's start off with this division you just talked about, right? To me, Buffalo, I always had a thing for them growing up because Dominik Hasek was one of my favorite. Well, he was and is the greatest goaltender of all time, but he was one of my favorite players growing up.
Slide that in there.
Even when he wasn't, playing for the Red Wings, I still loved this guy. I thought he was, fantastic, and always rooted for him, and still a little bitter about that Dallas Buffalo game. We won't talk about Brett Hall, but so whenever we talk about girlfriend teams, Buffalo is always going to be on my list until they get a cup. And not only that too, but I think watching them kind of go through this rebuild a second time in the last decade, I'm kind of sick of seeing it for Buffalo fans, and I just want them to be successful. So part of me, again, that's why they make my list, because part of me just wants to root for them to go deep and at least maybe get in the playoffs. Yeah,
I'm rooting for them to get in the playoffs too. They're the only Atlantic Division team that is on my list. I'm watching them because I want to see them make the playoffs. I mean, I'd love to see a team that is out of the playoffs storm back and make the playoffs. That's a cool story. I'll be honest, the one something that has really drawn me to them, outside of really talented young players, Tage Thompson is unbelievable. It's the fact that they have $17 million in cap space, and I really want to see a team that is nowhere. They actually have spent the least amount of money in their cap hit out of any team in the NHL, and I would love to see that team make the playoffs, because that does not happen. It just does not happen, and it's pretty clear they were not prepared for it to happen either. I doubt they make the playoffs. My guess is they've got about a 10% chance at the playoffs, maybe 15%. So it's going to take a lot for them to make the playoffs. It's weird that their home record's so bad.
Yeah, that's shocking. And another thing about Buffalo that I love is just they've got the ageless Craig Anderson in there too.
Yes, absolutely. They're a team I'll be watching. They're fun to watch whether they win or not. They generally they're good games too. So okay, so we'll just we'll track with your list, and then any team that I have left over on my list I'll toss out there, just because you've got the order there. So who's your number 9?
At number 9, I've got the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of people might be saying, why aren't they higher? I mean, don't get me wrong. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, love to see those guys in the playoffs. Yeah. But At the same time, part of me is a little bit torn because Ken Holland's fine. I have nothing but love for him, and he's a very well-respected person in my book. But I think he's just done a poor job, and so it's kind of hard for me to go any higher on this list until
you don't want to root for them because you don't want them to get any credit.
Yeah, a little bit. That's why funny. I just can't go any higher than number 9.
Hey, you got to give them the Evander Kane trade though. That was a good one.
That was clutch. I will say that.
And then you got to give him the Ekholm trade too. I mean, he's had some great moves, which is kind of a throwback. Like usually it's all about the players you draft, and with Ken Holland, it's been about the players he's traded and signed. Like Zach Hyman, another great signing. Now Jack Campbell, not a good signing so far.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, Edmonton, of course, is on my list. Who's not watching if I see the Oilers flash up, I'm turning the game on. Like something can always happen. And in the playoffs, the fact that Leon Draisaitl last year was so good with like one leg, I am excited to see what will happen when he has his whole body. So Edmonton's very high on my rooting list. Plus, like I always feel like it's a good thing when a Canadian team does really well. It's always it's good for the game, right? I mean, I hate this. I don't hate to say it. It's just it's good for the game.
Yeah, it is. Okay, who's your number 8?
At number 8, I've got a little Cinderella here, the Seattle Kraken.
All right, yeah. How could you not root for them right now?
Right. I mean, it's a team of second and third liners that have just. It's almost like Angels in the Outfield kind of story to me, just a team of, rejects, players that nobody wanted. Well, yeah, of course, Matty Beniers has been great, and it'll happen. But again, like you look at, Eli Tolvanen, outcast from Nashville, and he's only put up 22 points in 33 games. He's been phenomenal.
Yes, it has some Vegas Golden Knights first year vibes. Where it was like, that guy's not that good anymore, and he goes there and he's crazy.
Yeah. So, they don't have a William Karlsson putting up 40 goals, but, they're doing it collectively, which has been fun to watch. And, if they can get some competent goaltending, which Philip Grubauer's been all right lately, but, hey, if he can turn it on and be that Colorado Avalanche goalie he once was, it might be fun to watch in the playoffs.
Okay. Yeah, they're definitely on my list, too. They just score goals. It's great. I never thought they'd be the team that was scoring goals and playing a little more wide open. Like out of all the playoff teams in the West, there's only 2 that have allowed more goals. And it's Los Angeles, who had no goalie in the beginning of the year, and Edmonton. So I think right now Seattle would play Dallas, who is Dallas is very high on my girlfriend team list. I really like the Dallas Stars, and they're on. I'll just tossing the teams out that are on my list. The Dallas Stars are very high on it. Love watching that top line play, and I think the Stars this year more than last. Like last year, they were coming in as underdogs. This year, they are going to be one of the teams to beat. And usually, I don't find myself rooting for that team, but because of how the Stars kind of have gotten here, I really appreciate it, and I love Jim Nill as a general manager. So I'm always rooting for Jim Nill as a person in any team that he's on, as long as it's not the Red Wings. All right, who do you have? It's 7?
7. Yeah, I've got the Winnipeg Jets. Number 7. For me, it's all about Connor Hellebuyck, right? This is a guy that I've seen go through some ups and downs.
You've been scouting since he was 11, yes,
dude. Absolutely. I want this guy to get a cup. I love this goaltender. I think he's probably one of the more underrated goaltenders, and not that I think people underrate him as a top tier goaltender, but he's elite in my opinion. And then also too, like I look at a lot of these contracts for the Jets, and like Connor Hellebuyck's only got 2 years. Blake Wheeler 2 years, Scheifele only 2 years, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to probably re-sign a 1-year deal and then be out too. Mm-hmm. So this year and next year is probably their window, and then it's I don't know how to really put it. It's just going to be a whole new era of Jets players. So
yeah, I'm sure they'll re-sign someone on that list.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure they'll make an attempt to re-sign Scheifele and, some of these other players, that hang around.
Scheifele, 38 goals so far this year. He's just been having a career year as well. I mean, he probably is not going to get to 50, but 45, I think, is very realistic. It's been quite a turnaround for Scheifele. Rick Bowness deserves so much credit for what he's done with so many of these guys who, I think after last year you went, other than, hey, Kyle Connor, we knew what he was. I mean, great goal scorer, but there was a lot of question marks about a lot of other players like Blake Wheeler, and there was just, this team was just kind of like, man, is this team just going to kind of fall apart and fall into oblivion? And he's come in here and has made them like a legitimate playoff contender. It's, they've kind of faltered lately. Nashville's really on the rise. Could Nashville catch them and make the playoffs? They're certainly in a position to do so. But the Jets have just been fun to watch because they can score goals, and they've got some high flying talent out there. And the fact that this is kind of like a comeback story from last year. Always like to follow those. And the fans in Winnipeg are fantastic.
Yeah, they are. And like you mentioned earlier, a Canadian team.
Right.
That's just great.
Right. All right, number 6.
Yeah, I've got another Canadian team, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, well, you can't have my wife as your girlfriend. I'm not.
I mean, you don't know what goes on behind
closed
doors.
Wow, yikes. Yeah, what do you do if your girlfriend team plays your wife, your main team? You just have to hope they don't find out about each other.
Something like that.
All right, so the Leafs are your 6.
Yeah, I mean,
listen. Why so
low? Why so low? Well, I mean, I got a little bit more love for all these other teams, and plus, I think once the Red Wings get back to the playoffs, assuming that Austin Matthews, Marner, all these guys are staying around long term for the next, 5-7 years, I think there's going to be a really good rivalry for the next half a decade between these two teams, and so that's just exciting for me. So in the meantime, so
you're saying you don't want to commit too much.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're not a little bit higher. So I can't go there.
I gotcha. Yeah, that's and I mean the Leafs are they're a great girlfriend team to have because there's so much pressure there, and with pressure comes great drama. And I mean you also don't have to look very far to find coverage for the Leafs.
True.
All right, into your top 5.
Top 5. All right. Yeah, let's start with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
A team not on my list.
Yeah, I mean, I figured they're probably not going to make a lot of people's lists because they're used up and probably a little...
Used up? They're a used tampon that we just kind of have to throw into the little bin.
Yeah, they've been, the girlfriend doorknob. Everybody's had a turn, right? I don't know what other way to put it, but... Gosh, yeah, they've got their cups. So, I mean, this is a team, though, growing up, like, I have family in Florida, so always went there, always rooted for Tampa growing up. It was just a team that I'd love to see out of the Eastern Conference. And, it was great when Torch took them and they had some success with St. Louis and Le Cavalier. And now they've got the Stamkos era in there, who I absolutely love Stamkos. To me, he's probably one of the more underrated guys, in
just
the league.
A good guy, too. Like just a fun guy to watch, a fun guy to listen to, and he's a hockey player's hockey player. For
sure, yeah. And again too, they've got the best defenseman. I love watching Victor Hedman every night. He just always is on point. And again, this team probably would have been higher, but they've got a couple cups, so
they have. Slide in. You said he was on point, and they have point. All right, yeah, Tampa Bay, not on my list, but I understand why they're there. They're it's an interesting. So I mean, they've been to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row. Could they make it 4?
They could.
Got to get past Toronto and then probably Boston, and that is probably the toughest road to the conference finals for Tampa Bay that they've had in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though. Part of me, I mean, I just look at the standings, and I think Pittsburgh's probably going to end up with that top wild card spot. But part of me wants Pittsburgh to drop down because I would love to see like an old dogs kind of first round matchup with Boston. I think Pittsburgh could really take it to them. That would be so much fun.
That would be really fun first round. Yeah. Looks like, based on the games in hand, that they should be able to keep that lead over the Islanders. But who knows? I mean, the Florida Panthers could get hot here. They've been a little better. Playoff races are weird right now because there's a good amount of points separating some of these teams, but there's also a lot of games in hand. Like Nashville's 4 points out, but they've got three games in hand, and they've won 3 in a row. And Winnipeg can't seem to win. Right. Yeah, the whole Florida and Washington are both 5 points out, but Florida's got 3 games in hand. You win those 3 games, you're in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shapes up, but I don't really care so much as to Pittsburgh is one of my girlfriend teams. They always have been. Mario Lemieux was my favorite player as a kid. Just loved him and collected every hockey card I could find. I have so many Mario Lemieux hockey cards. It's ridiculous, dozens of them. And then Sidney Crosby goes there and just had another reason to root for them. And then, I growing up, I hated the Red Wings. And so Pittsburgh plays them in the finals and they finally go beat them that one year. I mean, that cemented it for me. I was cheering for Pittsburgh every year when the Leafs were bad. So Pittsburgh's definitely like one of my always going to cheer for them unless they're playing the Leafs. There's probably no other team in the East that it would probably goes Toronto and then Pittsburgh in terms of teams I'd root for in the East.
Okay, yeah, I can honestly tell you, I remember us playing some street hockey in Floden, right? And you would show up in that Crosby Canadian jersey, and
yes,
I had just started, playing goalie, and I'm thinking the whole entire time, I'm like, dude, I want to just shove it in Mark's face because the audacity to show up in a Crosby jersey, unreal. This was right around that same time that they beat Detroit and all that stuff.
I had a Lemieux Penguins jersey too.
Oh, I would have loved that.
Still have it.
I love Lemieux. He probably, easily my top 5 favorite players of all time. He's, Claude, or you're not talking about Claude Lemieux, I hope not.
No. Yeah, Claude Lemieux. I have a Claude Lemieux Penguins jersey. I got a jersey with Claude Lemieux on it, even though he never played for them. Oh, that's funny. A Claude Lemieux Devils jersey would be pretty cool, though. With that, green.
The green
on there, yeah. They beat Detroit that year. Rip for you, I guess. But, then Detroit just rattled off a few 2 cups in a row. Yeah, so I'm guessing Pittsburgh they're not one of your girlfriend
Not
teams?
on my list.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. So and the fact that the Leafs aren't going to play Pittsburgh, I suppose there would be the chance of the second round matchup if the wild cards both won, but it's unlikely, so I don't have to worry about anything till the conference finals, which I don't think they're going there anyway, so I'm pretty safe with Pittsburgh, in my opinion.
Yeah, if Pittsburgh didn't have any cups, I would definitely they'd be number 1 on my list.
You're rooting for Tampa. What does cups have to do with it for you?
They're not number 1 on my list, though.
All right, who's number 4?
All right, number 4, I've got the Dallas Stars.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. There's just something about Joe Pa getting that cup that I want so bad. Not to mention, going to the Cup final a couple years ago, and they just kind of flamed out very, very quick. New coach. Just
totally
this
different.
Top line.
Totally different playing style.
Yes, this top line is so much fun to watch, and I'm hoping Sagan comes back soon healthy. Domi looks great. Dadonoff's been playing pretty good, so. This team would just be a whole lot of fun to watch. And if Jake Ottinger can play like he has the last few years in the playoffs, dude, they're going to be a hard team to beat.
Yes,
some playoffs.
And there are some I'll say mid-tier kind of guys where you're it'd be great if Ryan Suter, man, the guy's 38 years old. He's been in the league for a long time and has been a very good defenseman for the whole time he's been in the league. That he doesn't have a cup. You've got Sagan and Ben, who would be great to see someone like Ben is just a monster, and I love to see guys that are those power forwards that play really well. They're a playoff go-to kind of guy, and
yes.
The two of them have gone through a lot of adversity in Dallas, so I could appreciate if they were to get another shot at the cup. And like I said, Jim Nill for me is is top tier. So I'll always be rooting for Jim Nill.
I love it.
Okay, into the top 3. Who do you have?
Top 3. All right. Number 3, I've got the Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh, ugh.
What was that?
They would be in your top 3. Dude, Justin, at least now I found out that you're the villain on this show.
Oh, that's rough.
Justin's the villain.
So rough. Oh, man.
Justin is the Colin Cowherd of this show. Or is it the Stephen A. Smith? I don't know.
Gosh, I hope not Stephen A. Smith. I'll go with Colin on that one.
The Jim Rome. You can be the Jim Rome.
Jim Rome. Can I be Pat McAfee, please?
Sure, yeah. Sure.
All right. Good deal. All right. Yeah, for Vegas, for me, it's just, they came out of the gate, right? Super exciting team, make the finals. And they really have kind of cooled off a little bit since. And I think, getting a full year of Jack Eichel and hopefully maybe Mark Stone for the playoffs. Not sure how that's going to pan out, but man, there's just a lot of guys on this team that I just want to see win. And now Jonathan Quick, right? I mean, a guy who was pretty much written off, cast out of LA.
Yeah, but according to you, he's already won, so fuck him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Jonathan Quick has been phenomenal in Vegas so far. 4 games, 9-3.
Yeah, even a shutout. Yeah. By the way, Mark Stone is expected to come back on the 15th of April.
I love it. Month to go. And I mean, again, other guys that I want to see win, like Shea Theodore, Phil Kessel. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's got his cups, but I just love Phil Kessel. What's not to love about this guy?
Fair. That's fair. I always
yeah, give him more hot dogs. Let's go, baby.
Yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights are not on my list, and as a matter of fact, they're on my I don't know what I would call. I guess they're the villain team. They're a villain to me. I don't want to see them win. Other than it's fun sometimes to hate a team and they do well, and
you can call them the Karen teams, is what I like to refer to them as.
The Karen teams. Yes, they are a very Karen team. I'm not a big Eichel guy. I can appreciate what he can do. He's a great player. I just don't really like him. I don't like that Pietrangelo ran for the hills. I think that he could have stayed in St. Louis and they could have been a better team if he had stayed. It would have been interesting to see what they would have done there. And I think that he's kind of become a little more obscure there, and I don't like that. There's just things I don't like about this team, and so I'm going to actively be rooting against them.
Actively rooting against. I mean,
actively rooting against.
Listen, this has got to be a top 5 venue for hockey right now. And so for me, when you have just that excitement, what Vegas does in the playoffs, it's just a venue that I want to see teams. Go deep so I can keep watching these games.
Yes, and here's the other thing: likely Vegas will play. It's looking like the Winnipeg Jets now. I will say. If Winnipeg falters here or Seattle even, if one of these teams falters and Nashville jumps in and Vegas plays Nashville in the first round, I'd be here for that. I'd be watching every game of that series because that is 2 amazing buildings with great fans that would it would be a lot of fun to see those 2 teams clash. Kind of the 2 expansion teams going at it kind of vibe.
My gosh. Seattle, though, could you imagine these 2 expansion franchises?
That too. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Gosh. That would be so much fun.
That would be really fun too. So, thing is that Vegas is likely going to play Seattle, Winnipeg, or Nashville, which I have. You didn't mention Nashville yet. I don't know if they're in your top 2. Probably not. But Nashville is one of those teams. I always root for Nashville. One of my best friends growing up was from Nashville, and he loved Predators even when they had David Legwand and. Freaking Mike Dunham.
Fisher.
They had Mike Dunham, and they had Mike Fisher. Yeah.
Thomas Vokoun.
Yeah. So I've always just kind of had a little place in my back pocket for Nashville. So I'm rooting for them, but I don't want them to overtake Winnipeg. So that's I'm just rooting for. I'm rooting for a good story. Either way, there'll be a good story there.
Yeah, I will say next year. Nashville might make my girlfriend list just with Barry Trotz now.
Right.
I want to see him in a full year at that role. And
that's another reason to have Nashville as a girlfriend team. It's David Poyle's last year as general manager. Could he win a cup? Does he have a cup? I don't think so. No cups for David Poyle, and he's like the longest serving guy ever since, other than Lou Lamoriello, I think. So I mean, it'd be cool. They're not going to win the cup, but it'd be cool to see a little run out of Nashville. Okay, let's go to your number 2.
Number 2, the Minnesota Wild. There is just something about this team that's just, I mean, first off, it's the state of hockey, right? I mean, that's what Minnesota's referred to. And so it's just a big hockey state that I think really deserves something. Obviously when you move from, Minnesota to Dallas, and then you watch them a few years later go to the Stanley Cup Finals and win it, that's got to be some heartbreak, right? I mean, they were very close in the early 90s and late 80s a couple times going to the finals, but never could close, seal the deal. And now, I mean, they've got a guy in here. You talked about it, right? A superstar talent is what every team needs. And typically you look at the center position, but this guy's on the wing, kind of like Ovechkin. He reminds me a lot of him, the way he plays so hard and can score and can freaking score goals. Can he? Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov would just be so much fun to watch in a deep playoff run.
Yeah. And it looks like first round Colorado Avalanche, that's going to be the matchup. So that's one heck of a rematch there between those two teams who've played each other before. I don't have Minnesota on my list either. You actually have, you had Dallas, Minnesota, Vegas, Edmonton, Seattle, Winnipeg, all on your list. So that's 6 teams in the Western Conference. So heavy on the Western as well for you.
Yeah, it's a little harder. With Detroit being in the East, it's a little harder for me to root for the East.
I got you. That's fair.
I mean, I'll be honest right now. You will never see me root for Colorado, Boston, or New Jersey. Don't get me wrong. I want to see Jack Hughes, win a cup, but not in Jersey.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. With regards to like those other teams in the top of the Metro with Carolina and New Jersey and New York, Carolina takes a little step back because Svechnikov is now out for the rest of the year. That definitely hurts. I mean, they've just continued to cruise right along and do their thing. I mean, certainly that's going to hurt them in the playoffs. I don't think that it makes it so that they're no longer a contender anymore. I think they're just that good. But New Jersey's definitely on my, like, I'm going to be watching them. I'm rooting for them over the Rangers. Like, I kind of look at it like, all right, what kind of matchup are we going to get? And New Jersey really is probably one of the most fun teams in the NHL to watch. So how am I not going to, actively go and try to watch them play? And yeah, I mean, maybe in the conference finals, they end up playing the Leafs. And if the Leafs make it that far, then I'll be a happy man. So it will be what it is. But for the beginning rounds, out of those 3 teams, New Jersey's the team that I'm most interested in watching because I just love the speed that they have. I love the pieces that they've surrounded Hughes with, and they're just very, very fun to watch and very fast.
I'll give you that. They are fast.
Who is your number 1 team?
Okay.
Let me see if I can guess. Let's see.
Please.
Who are you about to pick? Are you about to pick Carolina?
No, they did not make my list.
Or is it the Rangers?
It's the Rangers.
It's the Rangers. It's Shesterkin.
It's Shesterkin, and it's Patty Kane.
And Patty Kane, yeah.
My gosh. He and Panarin, I'm hoping they just – I would love to see those two just dazzle in the playoffs and just have some of that old magic back. That would just be a lot of fun for me. And I've always been a Mika Zibanejad fan. I love watching him. And there's just something about the Rangers winning a cup, right? I mean, it's just – I don't know. It just feels like it's destiny at some point. I hope they do it sooner rather than later, especially after going through a rebuild and not necessarily an old, a tradition. Well, I don't know if you want to call it traditional, but what we would expect to be a rebuild. They kind of got a couple pieces here.
As close to a retooling rebuild as you can get.
Right. Yeah. Now they haven't looked super
dominant. We're going to rebuild with Artemi Panarin.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they haven't been super dominant since getting Kane, but I think things are slowly coming together. And if, again, Adam Fox, Shesterkin, I think these guys are just going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch in the playoffs. And, I expect them to, really to go deep, to really make a run at it.
Okay. Yeah. So you like, regardless, Rangers playing Carolina, Rangers playing New Jersey, you think the Rangers are the team to beat?
I do.
Over there.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm just gunning here, just making sure I didn't miss any team. No, I said the Nashville Predators were on my list. Yeah. So, I think I had 7 teams in the Western Conference. I'll say maybe one team that's outside the playoffs that if they made the playoffs, I would not be mad. I'd be rooting for them, are the Washington Capitals. If they could make some kind of little run back here and get themselves into the playoffs, I always like seeing Ovechkin in the playoffs, and the fact that they're likely he won't be in the playoffs is really, I mean, that's the first time in how many years like that they weren't in the playoffs. I think since one of his early years, right? So it's been a long time since both Washington and Pittsburgh missed and weren't in the playoffs together. So that'll be a different vibe. Wouldn't mind seeing them make a little run here at the end and get everyone sweating.
Yeah, I think last time they didn't make the playoffs, gosh, it was 2013-14. So.
Oh, they didn't make the playoffs in that. Is 13-14 the lockout year? Or was that
No, that was the year before.
The year before, okay.
Yeah.
So the first year coming out of the lockout, that's right.
Yeah, Ovechkin still managed to put up 32 goals.
Oh,
in 48
no, yeah,
games.
that was when they were like, yeah, they were still
rebuilding a little
rebuilding,
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, there's the girlfriend teams. Let us know what you think or who your girlfriend team is at OT Hockey Talk on Twitter. There's a lot of good ones out there. We give you 10. I suppose, you could pick like LA. LA would be a good one. If you, yes. For all things are equal, LA is a good one. I think like PTSD from when LA just played so defensive, and I hated watching them win. I hated them when they won their cup in 2012 and 14. They were dreadful. The way that they played. I did not like it, and I thought like they were kind of lucky, and they're a much different team now. I get that. I still have a hang up because of those years.
Okay, yeah, throw in Arizona, right? I hated watching them in the playoffs too, because like you said, they weren't scoring, and every game was like 1-0, 2-1, and I'm like, Rick, score some goals.
It is. Boring. I'll say I think I've gotten past it with the Devils. Like I would have never cheered for the Devils for a long time. I mean, the Devils beat the Leafs in the playoffs a couple years when they in the Sundin era, and disappointed me a couple times. And like they were the worst. They were the worst of the worst. But at least they they blew guys up, and it was long enough ago to where I'm past it now. But the Kings, I need at least 10 years from the Kings. So the Kings statute of limitations is coming up in next year. So maybe I'll come around then.
See, as long as you still got players from the era that I dislike, I can't root for you. So
yeah, that's it too. That's I'm there with you.
And Doughty, man.
Plus, I am not going to cheer for the Kings over the Oilers right now. So, and by the way, that's actually going to be a really great rematch, because that was a first round matchup last year too, and the Kings played really well and scared the pants off the Oilers. It's going to be a heck of a first round matchup between those two. Assuming that's the matchup and Seattle doesn't jump in there, but okay. Well, any final thoughts, Justin?
No.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a great night, and to our listeners, I hope you enjoy whatever is left in your day, whether it be the beginning or the end. Enjoy it, watch some games, and we will talk to you soon.